Our scripture selection is from the book of John. If you love me, you will keep my commandments. And I will ask the Father, and he will give you another advocate to be with you forever. This is the Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive, because it neither sees him nor knows him. You know him, because he abides with you, and he will be with you. I will not leave you orphaned. I am coming to you. In a little while, the world will no longer see me, but you will see me. Because I live, you also will live. On that day, you will know that I am in my Father, and you in me, and I in you. They who have my commandments and keep them are those who love me. And those who love me will be loved by my Father, and I will love them and reveal myself to them.
Gracious God, bless the speaking and the hearing of these words and the silent moments in between. Amen. So in today's gospel, we hear the simple truth at the heart of our faith tradition that says, if you love me, keep my commandments. And of course, Jesus' main commandment is that we love one another. And it's so simple, but we need to come here every week and meditate on this again and again, because we fall away from this ethic of love and return to it again and again. And in this passage, Jesus also says that when we love, God actually dwells and is activated within us. And we are in the Spirit, in the life, in the realm of God, even now. Even now. And in this loving, it's how we mother the world. And on Mother's Day, I want to talk about the work of love, the labor of love, the labor of peace. Because, in the Christian tradition, I think especially, we hear God is love, and we say God is love, and we say love our neighbor, and it's all, we know these are great ideas, but how do we practice it? What does the practice of love actually look like? What is our practice of love, our practice of peace? Mothers hold the world together. We don't need to have a womb to be a mother, to participate in the mothering of the world. God is constantly mothering the world, and it's this mothering of the world that our faith indeed calls us to. As I said, we don't need to have a womb to be a mother, but womb bearers do understand how through pain and hardship and labor and effort, life comes forward. We had the privilege and blessing of mothers a few years ago from the pulpit talking about what it was like to give birth. And I remember reflecting upon how mothers understand how nothing is born without blood and sacrifice, and life and death intertwine. And so there is an openness to all the constant possibility of new life emerging out of circumstances that seem painful, that mothers understand in their bodies. Womb bearers understand death and resurrection in their bodies. And so perhaps for this reason, patience and receptivity have come to be associated with the feminine and with mothering. But actually, we're all called to these qualities that are associated with mothering and with mothers, the qualities of patience, of compassion, of receptivity. And these are the things that will actually illuminate our humanity and prevent us from blowing the world to smithereens. The 13th century mystic Julian of Norwich is known for saying, how are you not my mother to Christ? She likens Christ on the cross, Christ's labor on the cross, as God giving birth to a new world. Through Jesus's allegiance and obedience to the transcendent love in his heart, a love beyond the world, a love the world could not fully perceive or was afraid to welcome. Through being obedient to that yet unseen, yet unmanifest love, even to death on the cross, we somehow see that love birthed into the world and the possibility of it being birthed into the world every moment through all of us. And so, in comparing Christ and Christ's effort on the cross, the mystic Julian of Norwich invites us to reflect upon what is the labor of love? What does the work of peace look like? And indeed, our ancestral mothers, the founders of Mother's Day, did call us to the same effort, to the same work of peace. Of course, all wars begin with the simple word, I don't like you, or I can't understand you, and then everything else goes awry. But it's the mothers and the children who then wind up becoming the casualties of war throughout time, where those, mostly men, who need to insist on their own way and impose will by force. Mothers seem to have a greater patience, and also being among the victims and the casualties of war after World War I, Julia Ward Howe and mothers across the globe, before TikTok, before the internet, figured out how to create this global network of mothers coming out to call the world to a greater peace, to the practice of peace, to the labor of love. And so the original Mother's Day declaration brought to us by our ancestral mothers, and it's becoming a tradition to read this on Mother's Day at the church. They said, "Arise, all women who have hearts, whether your baptism be that of water or of tears. Say firmly, we will not have great questions decided by irrelevant agencies. Our husbands shall not come to us reeking with carnage for caresses and applause. Our sons shall not be taken from us to unlearn all that we have been able to teach them of charity, mercy, and patience. We women of one country will be too tender of those of another country to allow our sons to be trained to injure theirs. From the bosom of the devastated earth, a voice goes up with our own. It says, disarm, disarm. The sword is not the balance of justice. Blood does not wipe out dishonor, nor violence indicate possession. As men have often forsaken the plow and the anvil at the summons of war, let women now leave all that may be left of home for a great and earnest day of council. Let them meet first as women to bewail and commemorate the dead. Let them then solemnly take counsel with each other as to the means whereby the great human family can live in peace, each learning after his own time the sacred impress, not of Caesar, but of God. In the name of womanhood and of humanity, I earnestly ask that a General Congress of Women without limit of nationality may be appointed and held at some place deemed most convenient and at the earliest period consistent with its objects to promote the alliance of the different nationalities, the amicable settlement of international questions, the great and general interests of peace. Her counsel never came to fruition. This Mother's Day became a Hallmark holiday, and I do hope that mothers all received breakfast in bed this morning. You deserve it. That's not what I'm saying. And it's a yes and. We've heard about the yes and. We hear this great call for this council of mothers, and it never came to fruition. But those of us who gather in the mothering spirit of God, the God who Jesus compared to being like a mother hen who sits patiently over all of us, covering us with her wings. This was the metaphor that Jesus used for God. God being like this mothering hen, patiently looking at all of us, saying, when will they do what I know they can do? When will they build a world built on a foundation of love? When will they give themselves to the work of peace? When will they give peace a chance? This mothering hen is a lot like John Lennon, in my opinion. But this is the spirit in which we gather, this patient, compassionate presence, which is the Holy Spirit of God. And for those of us who return to this place and return to that consciousness again and again and seek to get into that mind of the mothering presence, we need to make sure that church becomes that council of mothers that Julia Ward had, that never fully manifested. Julia Ward Howe's vision never fully manifested. So it's all of us, wounds or not, who are called to be that council of mothers, doing the work and the labor of peace. And for practicality's sake, I want to talk about King's 6 principles of nonviolence. Because Dr. King, after all, we forget, was really the mouthpiece of a movement organized by women, by mothers. And mothers like Ella Baker, mothers like Rosa Parks, who was actually connected to the Highlander Folk School, who learned the strategies and practices of nonviolence. And actually talked about the concrete work of peace. What does it mean to actually practice peace? To not impose your will by force. You know, we hear throughout the Gospels and Paul's letters, love is patient, love is kind, it doesn't insist on its own way. So what are the practices of peace? And we hear some of the practical practices of peace outlined in the King Center's defined 6 principles of nonviolent strategy. First, we hear nonviolence is a way of life for courageous people. It is active, nonviolent resistance to evil. So nonviolence and peace isn't passive. We actually must wage peace and declare peace through our actions, like Julia Ward Howe, like our ancestral mothers. Nonviolence seeks to win friendship and understanding. The end result of nonviolence is redemption and reconciliation. 3, nonviolence seeks to defeat injustice, not people. So if we're mothering the world, we see even the most unsavory characters as our children. And we can mother ourselves and each other. We can speak to, like George Fox says, speak to that of God in everybody. And everybody has a little bit of God in them. And that's what we're allowing to be born in ourselves, and that's the birth that we're nurturing in others. Nonviolence chooses love instead of hate. Nonviolence resists violence to the spirit as well as the body. Nonviolent love is active, not passive. Nonviolence does not sink to the level of the hater. Love restores community and resists injustice. Nonviolence recognizes the fact that all life is interrelated. And so this is why this labor of love, this work of peace, this practice of mothering the world would have us manifest that which we know is possible through love, what we know is being born. We manifest that. We don't try to fix others or fix what is preventing that greater love from being born. We just make it happen. Nonviolence believes that the universe is on the side of justice. The nonviolent resistor has deep faith and justice will eventually win. So these are the practices of nonviolence which illustrate the labor of peace, the labor of love. I suppose we see the practice of nonviolence certainly expressed on the cross and by all mothers. And I want to say that doesn't mean we don't have boundaries. That doesn't mean we don't say stop. Mothers in Tibetan Buddhism, they have in their art, they have wrathful expressions of compassion, including illustrations of archetypes of the divine feminine that are indeed wrathful. And Dilgo Chensei Rinpoche, who's a teacher of Tibetan Buddhism, talks about how wrathful compassion is like a mother who yanks the kid out of the road really fast when they're rushing into traffic and says no really intensely to get that message across. The intention is to always preserve and nurture life, not punish or destroy. So what would it look like if Mother's Day was a call to all of us to mother the world in this way, to give ourselves to the labor and work of peace? Hopefully Hallmark will decide that sells someday. For now, we can continue showing up for each other as beloved community. We can be that council of mothers by the grace of our mothering God. Amen.